Welcome to the Soul Touched by Dogs podcast, the show for dog lovers who see dogs not as toys or tools, but wise souls worth our respect and care. I'm Anke Herman, and I'm your host. I talk to awesome humans, people who do great work for dogs and their people. So come and join us for today's conversation. Hello and welcome, Dr. Holy. I'm super excited to have you here.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Well, I'm very much looking forward to chatting to you because it feels, it's one of those funny ones because I've attended your summit, so I've seen a lot more of you than you have of me. So that's quite. And so let's fill people in, let people know where you're based and, what's your business with dogs.
So I'm based in London in the UK, but I work with people all around the world. I'm really lucky to be able to connect with people in loads of different places. And I have a bit of a hybrid business. So I'm a clinical psychologist and I kind of did that first. So I work with just a small number of people therapeutically, but exclusively only people that have dogs. So that's a little specialist thing that I do there. And then I also support dog guardians with their dogs, but with that human lens. So it's not just about how do we work with the dog, but actually how is the human feeling? What's that connection there? How can we help everyone to feel a little bit better in a kind of trauma-informed way? And then just lastly, I work with dog professionals as well. So supporting them to grow their businesses in a way that feels ethical, not kind of nasty and salesy. So I do a whole spectrum of different things. Yeah, very busy.
My kind of girl. So I think it's totally fascinating to kind of like, okay, like it makes sense that on that emotional level, dogs and people, that it's sort of very intertwined. We kind of, it's like, yeah, you know how dogs can smell when you're scared. Yeah, so they can hook into all kinds of emotions. So what was sort of the trigger point for you to, like, so you did your psychology, you work with people, like how did the dogs come into all of that?
It's the age-old story of my own dog who was struggling with life, bless his heart. He was a real accidental puppy. So it was a case of I was working in an inpatient ward at the time. My colleague had, for whatever reason, we won't judge him, brought a puppy home. And the dog had initially come from an abusive situation. He'd quote unquote saved him, brought him home, and then proceeded to go work a 15-hour shift. And this poor puppy was, of course, developed horrendous separation anxiety. And the landlord said, you've got 48 hours after about a week to essentially get rid of the dog. So I said, sure, I'll look after him for a few days until we can figure out a rescue. And then he never left. And he's still here to this day. But Riggs had so many difficulties, bless him. He was really traumatized, super environmentally sensitive or reactive, as it's often called, to dogs, to people, to sounds, terrible separation anxiety. He was self-harming, so much going on. And initially, I obviously sought help from professionals, trainers, behaviorists, online, all of that kind of thing. And nothing was really working. And I was getting seriously stressed out and anxious about his behavior. He was really struggling. And the connection just wasn't there. Like I loved him, but we weren't finding a way through it. And then it was literally like one day someone turned on a light bulb over my head and I thought, hang on a second, why don't I take the trauma-informed knowledge that I have from working with people and apply it to this situation, not just to my dog, but also to myself. And that's kind of where it all started. And it went from there, really. So yeah, and it's all thanks to Rigsy, who is the best dog in the world, 100%.
So cute. So what was that first insight? Like, what was the first thing you did differently or saw differently where you go, oh, Jesus, yeah, we kind of have a way in here.
Honestly, I just stopped trying to train him. And that might sound really crazy coming from a behaviorist or a trainer, but I was trying to, quote, fix his emotional instability by asking him to lie down. Like, how would that ever work? If you think about a human,
Yeah.
and it at the time, like I said, I was working in an inpatient ward. I was working it was a forensic setting, so these gentlemen would have been in prison, but they weren't very well, so they were with us in hospital instead. And I saw this play out at work all the time. So someone would be really angry or really sad, and instead of just sitting and listening to the emotion and talking to that person about what they're experiencing, people would find that uncomfortable and they'd want to step in and be like, shall we go do an art session? Or would you like to go outside? Or trying to fix the problem with a task. And that's what I was being taught to do with my dog. Oh, well, he just needs obedience. He needs to go to his bed. He needs to lie down. Or worse, some trainers really suggested some quite nasty methods, which we didn't do, thankfully. But I was like, whoa, hang on a second. How would I feel if I was him? And I was saying in my dog language, Mum, I'm really struggling. And it was responded to with, can you go lie on your bed, please? Like, that does not compute.
Yeah, yeah, makes you really feel heard, right?
Exactly. So, yes, that was kind of where it all came from. Now, I'm not saying there isn't a place for teaching your dog skills. I think that can be really fun. My dogs know all kinds of verbal cues and things like that, but it's not the answer when it comes to helping them with severe distress, which is where lots of dogs are, unfortunately, whether their people know about it or not. So, time and a place for all kinds of different things, but we have to look a bit further than training sometimes, I think.
Yeah, yeah, that makes total sense. So you just said something like whether people are aware of it or not, like are there things that you find people often overlook when they, think the dog needs training, but you go, well, actually, they need some love and understanding first and some nervous system reset. Are there sort of typical things that people overlook or misunderstand or judge wrongly?
I don't think in most cases this is deliberate or malicious by any stretch of the imagination. I think sometimes it's just you don't know what you don't know. So, one of the most common examples of this, I was at like a spring fair in the town that I live in a couple of weeks ago, and there were like market stalls and activities, and it was super busy. There's probably about a couple of thousand people there in quite a small space. Loads of people had brought their dogs. Now, some dogs were totally fine, just having a nice day. Other dogs were showing all this body language. They were licking their lips, their eyes were wide, they were turning their head, they were jumping whenever something would come near them. And the people weren't even looking. I was kind of watching from afar, and this little Jack Russell was kind of like, oh my gosh. And his mum was chatting away to another human and either didn't notice or noticed and didn't do anything about it. And I just thought, gosh, like that dog is being so polite and being really quiet and holding all of their emotions inside. But I wondered if they had been a bit more expressive and if they'd been barking and howling, what would have happened then? Would they have been told off or put in the car or whatever it might be? So it kind of happens like that on a very base level. And then I think the other thing that happens really commonly, and this is normal, we do this human to human as well, is if you're having a hard time yourself for whatever reason in your life, we do become a little bit more self-focused during those times because we just don't have the capacity to think of others as we normally would or as we would like to. And so it's as if all our empathy is used up. We all talk about compassion fatigue sometimes where we just think, I don't care anymore. And so often, if you're caring for lots of others or you've got super busy life, you just may not even have the capacity to think that your dog is struggling. And instead, we interpret it as my dog is naughty or disobedient or loud or just being a pain. All of these kinds of phrases. Dogs aren't really doing that. They're just saying, I'm struggling, I'm overwhelmed, or I'm stressed, or I'm excited, or whatever it might be.
Mm. Yeah, that makes so much sense. I mean, yeah, I don't know. It just reminds me of like a neighbor I had in Granada who was really. I mean, he was a dog trainer. Well, that's a whole different topic. But he basically flooded that dog. Like he rescued that dog, and he was like really nervous, really anxious, and he was getting really freaked out. And he noticed, and his solution was to take him to a manifestation. Until he literally like, oh look how calm he is now, and I'm like, and you don't see that this dog isn't calm. Like she was so shut down. She was just like, okay, life's over, whatever. I think there's so many things that we can misunderstand and almost like see the wrong things because we kind of look through the lens of, oh, the dog is misbehaving, right? If you were to look at a behavior through the lens of my dog is struggling, I think you'd see something totally different.
Yeah, for sure. And I talk a lot about trauma and how our past trauma as humans can massively impact the relationship we have with our dogs today. And one of those that really reminds me of that, what you were just saying there, because actually, if we're looking through it through the lens of what we've been taught as children, dogs should be seen and not heard. Dogs should lie quietly at your feet. All of these kinds of things that we were maybe told as kids, it gets transferred onto the dog. And when you really take a step back, you think, where did that belief even come from? Why do I think that? And as adults, we get the opportunity to challenge these beliefs, but you don't challenge it if you don't even know you have it.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
it's getting played out in your behavior. I always think it's just quite ironic that people will say things like, my dog never listens. And I always want to say, well, are you listening? Because it's a two-way street, right? It's not just they should listen to us. We have to earn that. And we do that by listening to them. And you know what? If my dog says no to something, even if I really need him to do it, I have to take a step back and say, okay, I'm going to honor that. And if it's something that needs to happen, I need to think of a different way of doing this because you clearly don't want to do it that way. And it takes a bit of patience, but I think it's worth it for your relationship, definitely.
Mm. I think it's that trust that you never want to break it. I mean, I've had the luxury of seeing like the two boys I had, they came pretty traumatized, and you really notice that they're like, okay, people, men, nah, can't trust, right? And so you can tell like and the two girls, they basically, they're big dogs, nobody's ever messed with them. Like they also had the luxury of kind of catching me like a lot later, like they weren't the first dog then. So I'm a lot more, like, I've seen this T-shirt where it says like, mess with me and I'll fight. Mess with my dogs and they'll never find your body. Like I'm kind of like that. So it's like I will not. Like I've been really conscious of doing whatever I can to keep them away from sort of some kind of traumatic event, like little Leo who got bitten and never was sort of quite the same after that. These two girls, they still like, one is like 12 and a half and she goes, I'm cute, and you know it, because nobody's ever challenged that. And you can
Yeah.
see the difference in the way they experience life, and life is with them and it's such a precious, like, call it innocence or call it like openness and trusting, and I'm like, it's the worst thing to think to somebody with some stupid, like to just destroy that
Hmm.
by kind of making them feel like, oh, I don't really care what's going on for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I just always want to think, how would I feel? And
Mm.
people really often have a problem kind of aligning dogs with people. So they're not people. No, they're not. But they have a very huge emotional range, just like we do. And actually, you know what? Sometimes humans, we hide some of our emotional range. We don't want to be seen to be upset or angry or prideful or whatever it might be. Whereas your dog, like, they don't hide anything. They're just like, here I am. And actually, the only times where they do hide things is when they don't feel safe. And that's
Mm.
why so many rescue dogs come home and they appear really meek and calm and quiet. And then you get 4 months in and they go, you know what, I can trust this human. Now you're going to see how I really feel. And they go, hang on, why have I got this really reactive dog? It's like, well, it's kind of a compliment because they're saying, this is me. And then you get to step in and support them with that rather than them feeling like they can't express who they really are.
Mm, mm. It feels a little bit like the sort of step number one is like let go of expectations, yeah. It's almost like look at the dog in front of you. Mm,
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah.
And also for yourself, like what expectations are you putting on yourself to be this quote perfect dog parent or to have a dog that is trained like, Bailey down the road or whatever? Like it's a totally different circumstance. So
That is true, and I do very much remember sort of those. There was this mix of frustration and bit of shame, bit of guilt. Like, when I had like, little Leo who, yeah, he'd gotten bitten, right? And so now we were living in like, you've been to Granada, like there's these little, in the Albaicin, these little cobblestone, like there's no space to get
Mm.
out of the way, right? So and the other dogs, like they just come right at you, right? And no, they don't always have the person with them. So it is like there's nowhere we can go, and he would then go, okay, in case of doubt, I'm just gonna throw myself at the other dog, right? And so you kind of felt the looks of the old Spanish woman behind us, like, look, she got like, look at how, like the dog tracks,
Yeah.
and this was like, oh, like I do remember it's not nice, but I think it's almost like I can't let that take over, you know.
Yeah, but it feels like it does sometimes. It can feel absolutely mortifying when your dog is doing something in front of others, whether it's a member of the public or even a family member sometimes, because they've got their own opinions on what you're doing, right? Um, but I think that is exaggerated if in your past, either as a child or a younger adult, you had a history of being highly criticized by a caregiver or a teacher, or judged if you had bullying, for example. I was bullied horribly at school. And so I felt the intensity of other people's judgment at like 10, 11 years old. So then, fast forward to my early 20s with my dog, and I got a look from someone. It's just a look. It's not going to kill me, but it felt like it was going to.
Yeah.
It felt horrific. And so I couldn't be everything I needed to be for my dog because I was so wrapped up with how I was feeling and how mortifying it was. So, part of it is unpicking that. And, you may not be able to change it, but you can at least identify it. And I always say to people, like, just say to yourself, I'm doing that thing again. My mind is doing that thing again. This is not reality. This is an exaggeration. I'm just going to leave it there, and then I'm going to move on and go do something nice with my dog instead.
Yeah. So when people come to you, do you actually like how much do you work with the person, how much with the dog? Or, do you look at the dog at all?
Yeah, like I would say a 50-50 split. So in my most popular program where I work with sensitive dogs, like it's a 12-week program and a good 50% of it is talking about the human end of the lead. And that's because you are a partnership. Like it's not just about the dog. They need to feel trust in you. You need to have collaboration. You need to feel confident. How many people learn a technique and then they get into the situation and they're like, what was that thing I was supposed to do? It's completely gone from my mind. Well, that's because you are having a fight or flight response yourself. So the first step is actually, how can I regulate my own emotions and my own nervous system before I try and help someone else do that with theirs, whether it's a person, a dog, or an elephant? Like, it's got to start from you, right? Or you're not always going to get super far.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, have you had sort of situations? I would imagine, yeah, but I mean, if there's a story you can tell, where a human had an insight and it showed up in the behavior of the dog and change in behavior of the dog. I would imagine that's almost inevitable.
Yeah, definitely. I'm trying to think of a good example. It's kind of like, when you did you ever put on those glasses when you were a kid that like you put them on and you get like a kaleidoscope inside and it would distort the outside? That's often what it's like, right? So it's almost like we're wearing these distortion glasses all the time. And then if you just take them off and just look at something slightly differently, it makes all the difference. So one of my students a couple of months ago, she said, I've just started. She said, to be honest, I haven't done a lot of the things that you told me to do, but what I have done is I just started playing what we call the cheeky chicken game before, and I can explain that if you want me to, before we leave the house. My dog and I, her dog's reactive to dogs and people. And she was like, it gives me so much confidence. It makes me feel so much lighter. And I'm looking at my dog differently. She's like, I'm not scanning her every part of her body going, is her ear moving 1 inch too far to the right? Is her tail slightly lower than it should be? I'm just looking at her as a whole. And I always think that's a really good thing to see. Don't hone in on one piece of the dog. Look at them as a whole and decide, oh, they're generally okay or they're feeling a bit worried. She's like, so just something as simple as that, making that one transition change my outlook on how I looked at my dog. And then we then had a more positive walk. So it's interesting how just tiny little tweaks sometimes can, yeah, make that
Yeah.
difference.
So now, I mean, I can't let you go without the chicken leg game. Like,
Well, it's funny because normally I give my students video demos of all of the things I teach, but I always say to them, I'm not giving you a demo of this because it is ridiculous. So when my dog Strudel, we were in an apartment building for a while, and she was 6 months old, bless her. She got attacked by another dog and she had 17 stitches down her neck, really bad. And she was understandably very worried by dogs on flexi leads from there on. And what was really difficult is we were on the 7th floor, so we would come down in the lift or go up in the lift, and those floors would be ticking away, and I'd be thinking that door is going to open and I have no idea what's on the other side. Is there one dog? Are there 5 dogs? Is there a dog off lead? Is there no one? And so my anxiety would start to go up, and this is in the last 2 years. My anxiety would start to climb, and she for sure would be like, "What's up, mum?" Like, and she would start to get stressed. So we started playing what I refer to as cheeky chicken, which is literally where she goes between my feet. She's a Leonberger, so she's really big. I get her massive long giraffe neck and I just go, "Who's a cheeky chicken? Who's a cheeky chicken?" We just sing this ridiculous song. Now you could put whatever words you like in there, but I do like alliteration. That's quite fun. And by the end of the elevator journey, she's smiling and panting. I felt like a bit better because we'd moved and got some of the energy shifted. And then whatever happened when the doors open, we can handle it. Just so silly, not remotely anything to do with training, but made a big difference for both of us, I think. So yeah.
Oh, that makes so much sense though, right? Because it kind of took your mind off. There's the physical movement, and it just shifts the whole. Yeah, no, I definitely can totally see how and why that would work. It'd be also hilarious if somebody comes into the lift.
Well, I only realized probably about a month after I started doing that. I was standing waiting for the lift one day and I could hear people having a conversation from another floor, and I was like, "Oh, so everyone can in fact hear what you're saying." Okay. We've just been putting on a performance for everybody.
Like, now what your neighbors were talking behind you, but oh, there comes the cheeky chicken then.
Exactly.
Oh, that is funny. But I think it's a very cool trick because I can totally see it takes that, like it's almost like when your dog kind of eyes at something and you just, kind of manage to break that off. But it's like we're the same,
Yeah.
sort of this kind of scanning and worry. And I think it's anything that kind of cuts through that is shifts the whole mood. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So the 12-week program you're talking about for sensitive dogs, that's online, I would assume.
Yeah, so I normally offer a free workshop that people can come to just to see if we're a good fit for each other. And because as I say, a lot of people that I work with the human as well, and that's not for everyone. So I run a workshop called "Are You as Triggered as Your Dog?" which people are welcome to come and join if they'd like to. And then if they want to keep working with me, they can enroll on the 12-week program after that.
Cool, but that's all online, so it doesn't matter where somebody is. And yeah, that's very cool. So where can people go and find out about the program, about you, but all the other things you're up to? Where can
So
they
if you want to register for that workshop, it's pawsupdogs.com/triggered. But the other places to find me are my podcast. So I've got a podcast for dog guardians called Letters from Your Dog. And I have a Facebook group where I do lots of interviews and events and things like that. And that's called Kindness is Essential, Not Optional Dog Training Support. So if you're on Facebook, you can come and catch me there. And then the main website is pawsupdogs.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I think I just love that approach of looking at both sides of the leash, because I think you can't just like hold into and fuff around with the symptom and ignore the whole picture. And I love that you're doing that. So thank you so much, and thanks so much for coming.
Yeah, it was fun. Thank you.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review so other dog lovers can find the show. If you haven't already, head over to soultouchedbydogs.com and sign up for weekly doggy cuteness, tips, recommendations, and personal stories to warm your dog-loving heart. And if you know a awesome human you think I should interview, I'd love an introduction. Email me at Anke, that's ANKE, @soultouchedbydogs.com.